Good evening, viewers. Welcome again to Discovering Truth, and I am viewers, and welcome again to Good evening, viewers, and welcome again to Discovering Truth, and I am Pastor Forbes from Abiding Word Ministries. Tonight, of course, I want to start by saying a special congratulations to all the women of the Gambia, of course, to the woman in my life, my wife, and all the women here, because today is International Women's Day, and interestingly it comes on the heels of Sunday, which was known in the European part of the world as Mothering Sunday. And so from Mothering Sunday to today, it's all a women's affair, and we say congratulations to all the women. None of us is alive except a woman produced us and brought us to the earth, and she's always the one to have first contact with us. For about 9 months, she knows us and she knows we are alive, comforted, cosseted in her womb before we come out for the rest of humanity to see us. So, women, we salute you, we love you, we give you a big hug. And to all the mothers, sisters, aunts, and all the daughters who are potentially going to become mothers, we say congratulations. Somebody said when you are bringing up your daughter, you're potentially bringing up somebody's mother, expecting that by biology or adoption or fostering, she would become someone's mother. The other truth about our lives, each one of us, is that we are 50% our mother, and of course 50% our dad, genotypically by our genes. So whether you love your mother, like your mother, know your mother or not, half of you is from your mom, so you must be grateful. And I am grateful. Of course, I remember my late mother. By and large, because of her, I am what I am today, and her memory is a sweet memory in my life, in the life of my siblings, our families, and the rest of us. And I'm sure that's true for every person as we celebrate womanhood today, the 8th of March. I want to speak briefly on something which has really gripped my heart in the last 10 days. And from it, I'll talk about maybe 5 principles, and maybe I might be able to stretch this into next week, because Easter is around the corner. It's about 3 weeks from now, and Easter is preceded by Palm Sunday. So there is relevance in my heart to talk about resurrection, and to talk about Hosanna, and to talk about the realities of resurrection in our lives, because resurrection is a hope for everybody. Things can happen in your life, and the things can make you feel that that's the end of it. But when you know that resurrection is a reality, you kind of know that you can bounce back, albeit with lessons learned, experiences in your kitty. You can bounce back in resurrection to be a better person. Almost 10 days ago, I was opportuned to visit Singapore in Far East Asia. Travel time, of course, you know, is a very long time. The time difference between Singapore and the Gambia is 8 hours, and sometimes maybe 9 hours. And when I landed in Singapore, it was about 6:40 in the morning. I had been flying for 13 hours non-stop from where I took off from. I haven't flown about 6 hours from the Gambia too. And when I got to my hotel, and my suite was wonderful. It was on the 32nd floor of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Singapore, and I overlooked all kinds of buildings, a soccer field on the water, and all kinds of emotions overwhelmed me. The most important emotion that overwhelmed me was the fact that I remembered that part of our nation's hopes, dreams, and aspirations was to become like Singapore. And I could tell why. Singapore is small. It's about 4 times the population of Gambia. They're about 5.5 million. They don't have much land. They don't have much natural resources as per resources under the ground. But Singapore defies all kinds of indices to the point that I discovered that together with Japan and Austria, the Singaporean passport is the 5th most powerful passport in the world. Powerful described as the number of countries you can visit with a Singaporean passport without requiring a visa or being given a visa upon entry or arrival at your destination country. And I discovered that the most powerful passport is the German one, followed by the Swedish passport. The German passport allows you into 177 countries, independent countries, and if you count Southern Sudan and possibly Taiwan, the Palestinian territory, Vatican City, you are talking about 197 countries. If you add all the little islands and territories, you are talking about 218. But if you say 197, then the German passport takes you to 177. The Swedish passport takes you to 176. The Danish passport, the British passport take you to 175. The US passport takes you to 174. The Singaporean passport takes you to 173 nations in the world. I'm sure you might be asking, where does the Gambian passport take you to? Of course, I checked that. It takes you to 68 countries. And for what it's worth, the Gambian passport, together with Kenya and 1 or 2 other countries, is the 5th most powerful passport in the world. And I thought, wow. But it takes you just to 68 countries out of 197. I also discovered that Singapore is in the first 3 or 4 countries where oil is refined, but they have no oil. I also discovered that they are in the first 4 for wealth management. People are comfortable with their wealth, their portfolio being managed in that country. Of course, I took notice immediately of how clean Singapore is, and you get to know that because I'm sure most people can remember the story of that American boy who chewed gum in Singapore and threw the gum and then did his graffiti, and his punishment was he had to be lashed, he had to be whipped, and there was a whole lot of furore going on. But you know, the furore was just the furore because people need to know that nations have their laws and their laws must be obeyed, and Singapore is clean. I saw a young, active population in our hotel. There were managers who were 25, 27, and I almost wanted to pull one of them aside and ask them, would you love to live in the UK, in the US? And I was almost certain that if I did that, they were going to tell me, no, I love my country. The Singaporean dollar is 1.3 to the US dollar. And the question in my mind was, how did that happen? And if we choose in our first republic, and I have had that rhetoric in our second republic too, our present republic, if we choose Singapore as an admirable dream, is it attainable? Possibly. Because every desire is attainable. The determination and hard work is a different ball game altogether. The zeal to bring the desire to pass is another ball game together. And so, of course, you know, when you're a visitor in a country, you ask questions, you observe, you read. I know they celebrated 50 years almost the same time we did. And 6 things distilled in my mind about Singapore. The first one was their sense of order. You cannot but notice order in Singapore. And next to it, of course, its efficiency. And I flew back into the Western European capital I flew from, and I said to my friend who picked me up, I said, you know, in this country of yours, you like a lot of order. He said, yes, Pastor, we like order here. I said, well, in Singapore, order just happens. And I began to think that it's not so much because it's enforced, because I'm sure it is, but also maybe because everybody has come into a corporate sense of responsibility. You know, when you live in a place where natural resources have not been given to you, you are small, and everything tells you that you cannot be a global player, you have to look inward and look upward to God and ask, what can we do with what we have? There is a story in the Bible about a prophet who was a prophet. He really served God, but he died, and strangely enough, he had debts to his name. And so the creditor came, and whatever the widow could sum up to pay was insufficient, to the point that the creditor was going to take his 2 sons as slaves, as collateral or compensation for the debt. So that was quite a huge debt, which means because you're religious and righteous doesn't mean you're financially smart. It's a lesson we all learn. And so here is a woman who is bereft of her husband, and the next thing she's probably going to be bereft of her 2 boys. But in the solution to her problem was a question, followed by a second question. The first question was this: what do you have in your house? What do you have? What can you bring on the table? So when I looked at Singapore and I asked questions and I read, I thought that for this country that doesn't have so much landmass, so much so that they grow vegetables on the rooftops of homes. They have projects for organic vegetables. So possibly the vegetables I was eating in my hotel were coming from the rooftop of somebody's house, because they've discovered that we do not have so much land to grow vegetables on the ground. So hey, let's do something with nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and sunlight and air. Let's have greenhouses on rooftops. Some people have satellite dishes on rooftops. Some people have vegetable gardens. And so they must have come together somehow and decided, 1963, 1964, 1965, and a little bit of their history that I read was they were part of Malaysia, as you know, and later there was a separation. So you are small and you are even made smaller. But you do not always look at what seems to be the negativity of your life, because in every weakness there is always an opportunity for strength, as in every strength there is always an opportunity for weakness. It is always said that the person's strength can be their weakness, because you can be so confident in that your strength that you create blind spots by your strength, and your strength becomes your weakness. So they came into order. And order comes with organization. Organization comes with planning. And all of them go together with efficiency and effectiveness. And they drew the world to this tiny island that's a city-state. The capital is Singapore. The country is Singapore. The second thing I discovered, that you could tell that they were highly educated. I always remember telling people, and I try to live by that principle, and I believe I must have said it on TV. I keep saying, live your life in such a way, in your office, in your entrepreneurial life, because, you know, this world has 7 billion people. So everybody is not going to like you. Some people don't like you for who you are. Some people don't like you because they had issues with your family or your tribe, your religion, your gender. You know, people have their own hang-ups. You remind them of their failure, or you remind them of the wife that did not treat them well, or the husband that battered them. So it's like you are celebrating your life and somebody's upset. So you discover that if you were waiting for everybody to celebrate you for your achievement, that's not going to happen. And so I tried to say, live your life in such a way that even if people don't like you, they need you. Because what you can deliver is such that you deliver it with such class, finesse, effectiveness, efficiency, precision, and quality that wherever they are, if they want the effectiveness of what you do and the quality output delivery that comes from you, they have to come to you. And so oil is refined in Singapore, but it has no oil. Wealth is managed in Singapore because they decided that, look, we are small, so this is what we're going to do. We are going to be efficient, we're going to be orderly, we're going to be organized, and we are going to be highly educated. Can that be replicated in any other country of the world that has some kind of similarity with Singapore? Definitely. But it's not just verbal replication. It means we must be ready for order. Question is, are you ready for order? Because the first level of government in life is self-government. Am I disciplined? Can I govern myself? Can I govern my thoughts, my passions, my appetites? Or do I want to eat everything at the expense of the next person? Do I understand that I am not as good as everybody else, so that there can be a win-win position if I let other people have a piece of the reality? When you talk about high education, I don't know, but I know that co-educational institutions are great. I know day schools are phenomenal. I know people who even do homeschooling. It's great. But you know, I know that when people, especially children, are sent to boarding schools, there's a whole lot of order and discipline that comes in boarding schools. I sent my daughter to a boarding school. By the time she was 13, her life was radically transformed. Her academic pursuit was greater because there is competition, and she had a total holistic pastoral education. She had to learn how to wake up with everybody. She had to learn structure, and there was no daddy going there and saying, I am Pastor Forbes, treat my daughter specially. I even had to obey exeat visitation rules. You know, I couldn't just go and say, I'm Pastor Forbes, so I need to see my daughter. I had to wait. I remember once I visited her, and I was told she's having her siesta. And I had to wait until the siesta was over before I could see my precious daughter. And so I believe that kind of educational system structures our kids. Because for starters, most boarding schools are far away from the city. You know, so you can't be doing daddy and mommy coming and, you know, a friend of mine, for example, sent his daughter to a boarding school, and she went with her suitcase. When she got there, the seniors welcomed her and took her to a room, opened her suitcase, and 75% of her clothing were sent back with her dad. He said, this is boarding school. They don't allow this here. You don't wear this here. You don't do that here. You don't do that there. And when she went on first semester vacation, she had an agricultural implement with her. And when they were taking her back to school, halfway through, she remembered that she forgot it. And she said, Daddy, stop the car. I need to go and collect whatever it was, a hoe or a cutlass. And the father was thinking that I could never get you to weed the compound, but the boarding school is putting something in you, because we want to train a highly educated, young, active workforce. The third thing I discovered in Singapore was that based on the hills of order and high education, they were very focused. I was shocked at the level of articulation, the hospitality, they were on top of their game with every question. And let me give you 3 examples. One of our party at dinner, I think the gentleman was either getting his handkerchief from his pocket and his $100 bill dropped. By the next day, every person in the hotel came to make sure that he got his money back. And he came from one of the first 5 countries with a powerful passport. And he said, not even in my capital city would somebody give you that $100. It's gone. Another of our parties sent her jacket for dry cleaning, and there were some US dollars in there. And the jacket came back with the US dollars, and she had to sign for her money. My own personal experience was that my cab that drove me to the airport took the wrong exit. Instead of going to Terminal 1 to fly Emirates, went to Terminal 2, and I said, we're in Terminal 2, and he said, oh, I'm so sorry, and he switched his meter off. Until we got to Terminal 1, he said, I cannot charge you. And I thought, I know places where drivers will argue that you told them Terminal 2 and not Terminal 1, and they'll charge you and they'll argue. And I thought, this is a place where you drop your $100 bill and it comes back to you. So they are focused people. I pleasantly saw little diagrams and paintings of little children, some of them 8 years old. This is a picture of my country, Singapore. I love my country. I love to live here. And I thought, wow, can that be repeated in other places? I began to think, so what will it take to entice a Singaporean to leave their country or to even buy another nation's passport or have another nation's passport? They really don't need it. But 50 years ago, they were like most other countries. Singapore, South Korea have defied all the odds. In South Korea, and I've been privileged to preach there too, you have roads going through the mountains. You actually drive through the mountains. Because it's mountainous, they had to do something. And I thought, wow. The fourth thing I noticed, of course, where you have order, a highly educated populace, a highly focused people, you're going to have motivation and entrepreneurship. I kept on noticing, I know they tend to be small in structure ordinarily, but I could tell these were young people doing so many things. And fifthly, I could tell that there's a high sense of industry. All major banks and franchises are in Singapore. And if you put all that together, it means the atmosphere of Singapore is enabling for anybody to be anything. You could feel it. In fact, one of our party who flew in from the US, he said there's so much positivity in this place. While I am here, I can do anything. And then another of our party who came from the US said, I want to come back here. We all said we want to go back. And one of our friends from the US said, I want to bring my friends here, but I'm wondering how many of my friends are disciplined enough to come here and to flow here. And then I thought about my own country, which I love so much. Can we do it? Yes, we can. Are we ready to do it? I'm not sure. But I believe there's got to be order in our lives, individual order, national order, organization. There's got to be a desire for high education and not just a mere passing by education, not quality that we beat ourselves in that cannot go and touch the world. There's got to be a sense of focus and sense of priority. We have to be able to negotiate when we must be dancing and when we must be studying. I think we must be very motivated, self-motivated, and very entrepreneurial, and not pick somebody's $100 and hide it, and not argue if somebody doesn't like the food in the hotel, because we know that one person can bring 10 more people, and we must not lose that one person because we are arguing whether the chips were fried well or not. And finally, a sense of industry that allows us to be and does not put a ceiling on what we can be and make us subservient to the will of a box in which we must live. But we can break the box and push the frontiers and create an atmosphere that would make our passport tour not just good for 68 countries, but maybe for 170 countries. The Singaporeans don't have 3 eyes, 2 noses, and 4 legs. They are just like us. They don't even have land. It's an island city-state. But they've done it. The ball is in our court. Until I come your way next week, by the grace of God, I want to continue with the part 2. This is Pastor Forbes saying, have a good evening. Women, happy Women's Day. I hope before I close my eyes in eternity, I will see my nation become what it can become. Because everything I saw in Singapore is possible in the Gambia, if we choose for it to be so. Have a good evening and good night.